call to order the meeting of the Newburyport Public Schools School Committee for Monday, November 7th. Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Ms. Sweeney?
Present.
Mr. Menon?
Present.
Mayor Holliday?
Present.
Ms. Weaver?
Present.
Mr. Decanter?
Here.
Mr. Keel?
Here.
Thank you. We'll stand for the second pledge of allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The mission statement of the Newburyport Public Schools. The Newburyport Public Schools are committed to the intellectual, physical, social development, and engagement of every student. Within a culture of high expectations for individual and group learning, our students experience rigorous academic challenge, are intellectually curious, and express themselves creatively. Our students enhance their well-being by applying knowledge and skills about nutrition, fitness, and healthy behaviors. Our schools are an inclusive and supportive community. As part of this community, our students demonstrate values of personal integrity, sensitivity, and social responsibility. Our schools partner with parents and community in significant ways to help achieve this mission. Members of our school community, teachers, parents, staff, and administration support this mission every day, in every classroom, on every field of play, and in every activity.
Before we move into the regular order of the meeting, we have an event that takes place, I think, here on an annual basis that is the awarding of the Mass Association of School Superintendents Certificate of Academic Excellence. I'll turn that over to the superintendent, who usually does the honors.
Thank you. And it's, I thought I saw Mike Tester here. It's Mike, okay. Mike. And I'm going to ask Ryan Campbell to come up. And I'm glad someone has a camera to take pictures. But it's my pleasure to award the Certificate of Academic Excellence to Ryan Campbell. He's duly qualified under the standards prescribed by the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. And he's awarded the Certificate of Academic Excellence. Now, I had a chance to talk to Ryan, and this is a mature, very thoughtful gentleman. And I offered him a teaching job, but he still hasn't go to college. But I know that his father told me that where he worked, and he worked at the Varian Semiconductor Equipment Associates, and did a summer internship. And they still calling you? I heard they're still calling him for help. So he has quite a future. He's also president of the National Honor Society, and he has a list of everything that he's done that would take us till about 10 o'clock. He has, it's really interesting. When he and I had a discussion and talked about what he was interested in, I know that he made a commitment to be the top of his class, and he is. And I don't know how he has time to include boating and water skiing and snowmobiling, mountain hiking and reading as leisure activities, but these are in his dreams, obviously, when he's sleeping at night. He's working so hard. He's very involved in community service, and he was involved with the recycling, and he's also was involved at one time in the real world design. And he was involved when the students went to Olin College. And no, okay, I'm making things up now. Okay, so, but he was involved with Walk for Hunger and so many things. And so, I just want, I'm glad Mike Tester is here to represent high school administration. The principal was not able to be here tonight, so thank you, Mike, for being here. And Ryan, congratulations. Yeah, where are you? Come on down.
We'll take your picture. What do I do? Just
Get the garbage can out there.
Someday I'm gonna come back tall.
All right, wait a minute, one more.
All right.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is our first period of public comment. There are people in the audience who would like to offer public comment. Now is the opportunity to do that. There'll be another session of public comment later on in the agenda. Is that Dr. Orlando back there?
Yes, sir.
Please.
I'd like to take the opportunity, first off, and you guys may be praying that I lose my voice, but I would like to comment that I have nothing but praise for the group of teachers who presented here, the GOME place-based educational experience. They were able to do something in a relatively short period of time of 6 months or less that was significantly admirable. I want to call your attention, though, however, to the showcase of the GOME group, which was to involve Newburyport High School at the Refuge in 2 years running that has failed to occur. There are obviously lots of concerns amongst parents in the community of the topic that was deferred for this evening's public conversation period. We had the MCAS data presented here at the last meeting, and I advised drilling down through the statistics on the lump together, advanced, proficient, and compare sciences to the math, social studies, and English language arts. I've also forwarded to you ACT subject tests and AP scores looking at the same parameters. In July, a small group of very concerned parents, of whom I will name myself as one, met with Dr. Kerbel about some concerns we had that have been festering within the district for many years. We had to ask for a follow-up meeting, and to date we have had very little provided to us in terms of suggestions or recommendations for improvement. In the past, I've come to meetings here where literacy at the elementary school was under the gun. Math, I believe in 4th grade, had some poor outcomes. MCAS scores for a given group of people, students, came under the gun, and we were provided with a discussion here as to what was felt to be the problem, concerns, and what some of the recommendations for improvement were to be, and what the monitoring system would be put in place to correct those as we move forward. I would like to take the opportunity to read comments I received from alumni from Newburyport High School, who know that I have been a very strong advocate of this particular topic. And I think it's important for school committee members to understand these comments. And there's several students. I did not realize this until I got to college and started taking courses here, but I did not do nearly enough labs in high school to sufficiently prepare me for college level courses. It is safe to say that I did not nearly learn as much in advanced placement science courses as two good friends in Triton, who had covered much more material at a quicker pace. Student number 2. One of the major thoughts as a college student is that I really didn't do enough labs in high school. I would say that this put me at a bit of a disadvantage in college. I also felt the department was a bit disorganized. I did learn some things, but I think there definitely is room for improvement. Student number 3. I pretty much explained what my college experience has been with poor science background. I soon came to understand that the first month of science classes were intended to be a review from high school. Not only had I never seen the material before, but I came to understand that I had not been prepared in the sciences for college studies. I can go on, okay? Another student, one of my major concerns with Newburyport High School Sciences deals with the lack of laboratory experience. Once we entered the lab, things became a little bit more frustrating. Perhaps not knowing the difference between a pipette, a burette, and a volumetric cylinder played a role in this. I was forced to spend twice as much time in the lab as any other student, learning information that they had already known from high school. We cannot allow this to continue. This needs to be an item that one of you puts out as a motion to be discussed here as to what some of the issues are, what is the assessment, what can be done or what is being done to correct this, and what some of the mentoring or assessment tools that are going to be put in place so that we don't continue with this. It's not fair to our students. One of you people needs to have the courage to propose such a motion, because these students had the courage to speak up. I've sat here for many years. In the last year, twice has the Theater Arts Group come here. And I've sat through here and I've supported their loss through many meetings here. The last time they came with a very forceful teacher advocate. They came with a very forceful community advocate in Ms. Edgemont. If there's no one else who really wants to stand forward on this, I'm a forceful advocate for sciences at this school. We cannot continue with no further labs. We must have some answers to the questions that have been proposed by numerous parents over many years in terms of what the problem may be, what the issues are, what the corrective measures are going to be, and what the assessment tools are going to be to move the department forward.
Thank you, Dr. Orlando. I think that what I would suggest is that some of those answers are being developed, some of those answers are being communicated, and the opportunity that we're going to have in 2 weeks for public conversation, I think, will be very constructive and very useful. Dr. McCarver.
Normally, you don't respond, right? That's right. So I'm going to respond because if the community is watching, they're going to hear and they're going to think that the superintendent of schools doesn't listen to parents, which is not true. And people are going to think that the superintendent of school and his administration take no action. And I think the people in the community are going to think, well, what are the teachers doing? Well, I'll tell you, we have great teachers, and they're doing a great job. And I'm very proud of them. And I take the comments very seriously, and Dr. Rowe, who's the one that spoke, knows we've been working at it. Okay, we've had multiple meetings. We've had teachers working together with our principal and our assistant superintendent of schools for curriculum. So we've been working very, very hard. I'll tell you, you have to give the teachers and our new department head an opportunity to work together. And so some of these, some of the scores and some of the experiences that have gone on in the past have been talked about, have been discussed, and already are under changes that are happening right now. So we're going to have a couple of weeks in which we're going to have the science department. The science department chair called my office today, and he wanted to be here tonight. And I said, no, this is not the time and place to have the science department. We're going to talk about place-based education. And then when we're prepared and ready to talk publicly about all the issues facing the science department, that's going to be in 2 weeks. So I want to say that we've been very, very aggressively talking about any of the issues at the high school, and I'm very proud of all of our teachers at the high school and the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Kathy?
Mr. Manning, just one point. This is a dialogue now, or is it a comment?
No, it is not. It is not a dialogue. If you have additional comments that you want to make, I want to make sure that everybody who hasn't commented has a chance to do that. There's also a second period for comments as well. Kathy.
Kathy Flaherty. I would like to say that I certainly support the superintendent and the administration's efforts and the staff, the faculty's efforts. I wish they had come sooner, and I realize that a lot of that is, it's water under the bridge, if that's the expression. But I also do think that the school committee, it would be nice if the school committee did look at some of the statistics and was aware of these things earlier, and that it wasn't parents that had to bring it to your attention. So I do certainly agree with Dr. Orlando, and it would be nice if, as with the MCAS data, that the school committee did put it on their agenda to look at this. I don't think anyone is trying to blame any particular individuals. I'd like there to be certain, I would say, financial resources that need to be put behind this effort. I think our science faculty needs support. There's been a lot of difficulties in science education across the Commonwealth and across the country, and I think that we need to support it, and that I really don't think anyone's trying to blame anyone, and I'd like to hopefully get the school committee to realize that this is an important issue and it should be on your agenda. Just as, I have to say, Stephanie, I'm looking at you, remember the first day you came to a school committee meeting and I was in the audience, I don't know how many years ago that was, pointing out the MCAS data about the math issues and the math instruction. And again, you know, that was 6 years ago at least, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so I guess I wish that everyone would be, you know, that other people on the school committee and where else would be looking at data. I know Dr. Purple just walked into this, so I really applaud him for stepping up to the plate. But I do think that that's part of the reasons why some of the parents get frustrated, because it's been going on for a long time. And I, of course, have just started to look at the science data. I guess I would like school committee members to try to look at that ahead of time and ask questions, you know, with respect to everything. But anyway, so I do think that we need to support our administration and our teachers, but I also think that it would be nice if we, you know, soon could understand and openly address what, you know, have a plan. As Dr. Orlando said, there was a plan put in place for, you know, for how to address MCAS issues, certainly in the lower grades. And also, I understand, I think Angela spoke of it earlier tonight, that there was a plan put in place to improve science education and to help the faculty members in the upper elementary school and the middle school. And I don't recall that having taken parent action to spur it on. I don't, but anyway, so I praise all that, and I just hope we can move forward and again have it be in a public conversation and on your agenda, so that it is something that is openly discussed. And you know, nobody's perfect, we haven't been perfect, but let's move forward and talk about it openly. Thank you.
Is there anybody who has any additional comments they'd like to share?
Zeb Warren, 8 Maple Street. I'll try to make it brief. I think math is somehow or other related to science, but so I'm hoping I'm not doing a total shift. But I've been plugging for getting started early, and I'm currently finishing up my arithmetic book, which I think most people will find they have something to learn about arithmetic, including calculus for 6th graders. And I had some handouts, and as I listened to the schedule, I don't understand if there will be a chance for me to say something about what I have to say. I had thought I'd say it last meeting, and then I moved it to this one, and it now sounds like the conversation with the public is already scheduled for other things. So I don't know quite what to do about the handouts I have. I know that Dr. Kerbel got Helen Vendler, the poetry professor of Harvard University, whose comment I think fit the science program that was presented tonight. What is in place has failed, that's prior to this, notoriously to make our students eager to read and drawn to learning. And I think we are hearing that. And I would like to see that changed, particularly in the elementary schools, so kids are really well prepared to get to high school. High school's too late to start this stuff. It's, as the superintendent of school has said, get your languages going in the 1st grade. Well, math needs to start back then too. I have handouts. I don't know quite what to do with them at this point. Thank you.
If you'd like to leave them, that would be fine. Is there anybody else who hasn't commented who would like to?
Dominique Deere, Warren Street. I wasn't going to speak with this because I know I'm looking at the clock and this is a deep agenda, but I wanted to make a comment and just segue off of some of these discussions, and I know that there'll be an hour during public conversation next week to speak on a very important matter of sciences. And then, of course, as we were listening during this public conversation in terms of how you're going to expand and incorporate place-based education, there's also discussion about the two schools and how we're going to look at that and do what we didn't do here in terms of once you have the facility, talking about how that facilitates the curriculum and, you know, and that dynamic. So, you know, last evening, I didn't watch I didn't see at the screening room when it was offered, Waiting for Superman. And I had joshed with Dr. Kerbel when he was in the Lions bed race during Yankee homecoming. So I'm wondering if it's wonderful if we have that public conversation here, but if in fact, even if it's at the beginning of the year, if you start to look at some of these issues and maybe do a forum, those forums that were on the 11th and the 13th of January, and really, you know, not necessarily because it was great, 111 minutes to watch the you know, the documentary itself, and I'm also going to look, you know, into the counterman to that, the counterpoint to that, you know, the inconvenient truth, which presents the teacher's viewpoint. But I mean, it's really, I think it would be not only a catharsis, but also basically to come forward and really look at some of these issues and really be truthful, because in speaking with especially looking from the teachers' perspectives, there's things that they need, and there was an inordinate amount of time that these teachers invested into what they did and what you know could administratively be helped within the community, you know, and investment in the community itself. So I mean, because I know that you're going to be looking at the curriculum itself with the 2 lower grades, with the high school as well, which we didn't do, you know, I mean, I think maybe that you should think of doing one of the forums that was so successful last January. But with that, propel it forward, because it was wonderful what we looked at the 2 issues, but then they didn't, you know, that's still on, you know, on our plate to look at foreign languages and you know, theater and performing arts. And then again, you know, back to the underwriting this, you know, the budget itself. So during that whole process is sooner rather than later.
Any additional comments? Dr. Lando, please.
It's brief. You know, in all deference to Dr. Kerbel and his authority, I don't have a problem putting my own words in my mouth. But I did not come here and criticize him or any of the teachers at the school. I asked for the school committee to ask for the assessment of what is felt to be the issue and what is being done about it. I do not want to have somebody say that I have been speaking in a negative manner for any one person in the school system. It may be the process.
Understood, thank you. Any additional public comments? Thank you. There's another opportunity later on as well. If we could move through the agenda, next item is the consent agenda. We have the warrants.
Yes. I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $12,352.46 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Any additional ones?
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $322,563.64 be approved and forwarded to the auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Any comment? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Are there any additional ones? We have a set of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of the Newburyport School Committee meeting from Monday, October 17, 2011.
Second. Any changes, comments, additions, subtractions, elaborations? Those minutes. Going once? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5 in favor, 2 present. I would like to offer Alex the opportunity, as our student council rep, to share his report with us.
So, it's been very busy at NHS lately. Also, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. On October 29th, I believe, there was the Halloween Fun Fair run by the National Honor Society. If Ryan were still here, he could talk to you all about it. But it was very, very fun. There were activities for young children in the community to do. I was assigned to the haunted hallway, so I got to jump out at little children, which was kind of entertaining.
For them, I hope.
Yeah. And that raised about $300 for them. And this weekend, the senior class held a silent auction / comedy night, and we raised over $2,500. So now we are on track to raise about $22,000 by the time senior rolls around, which is excellent. So then, also in this last weekend or so, the NHS theater department premiered The Witch of Blackbird Pond. It was very successful, and I know because I was sitting on stage looking at all of the people in the crowd. And it was very, very fun. Also, this Thursday, is the second annual dubstep dance, which is just like techno music, which is more insane. Bass Fest is going to be in the cafeteria. We're starting decorations tomorrow for it, and the cafeteria is going to transform. It's going to be amazing.
Even more so than it does during lunches.
Exactly. And so sports are finishing up, tournaments are starting, and Color Day is approaching, and it's beginning to get down to the wire. So in the next meeting, I will be talking to you about how we're all rushing around, trying to set up the auditorium at the last minute.
Any additional comments or questions?
Maybe I blacked out. Did you mention anything about the play?
Yes.
You did. You got time?
Okay. So on Halloween night, I was sitting at home eating candy, drinking some hot apple cider, when I get a call from the stage manager of the play, The Witch of Blackbird Pond, and she's a little bit frantic because the person they have to play the judge and magistrate just told them they couldn't do it, and the play premiered on Thursday. So she asked me if I could do it, and I said yes, and 4 days later I did the play. So, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And can I just ask you, I may have missed this, did you find a freshman class advisor yet?
Oh, yes, Mr. Koski, a new art teacher, thank you, is taken over, and they just elected officers. I'm not sure about all of them, but I know the president is Mr. James Kiss.
Great, thank
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is a conversation, a presentation on a suggested trip to Hawaii, to Newburyport High School, and it's not an editorial comment, but we never get presented with a trip to like the Arctic, or Cities, Florida, or Hawaii, so I'm interested in hearing about this. Mr. Madden.
Am I supposed to go anywhere in particular in order to do this?
Just on camera.
So I'll stand over here by Alex. So basically, I don't know, am I trying to inform you of this trip, or you already know about it?
Somewhere between inform and persuade.
All right, awesome. So basically, the idea behind this trip comes from me being a teacher in Hawaii for 3 years before I moved here. I'm originally from this area, but I taught in Hawaii and then I moved back here. And also a trip that I took to Japan to visit my brother, in which time I went and visited Ground Zero in Hiroshima. And both of those things are sort of, I brought them back into my classroom as a teacher, and it creates a lot of energy for the students. They're like super excited about, everything that I did. They ask me tons of questions, and they just, usually result in, that would be awesome. And so that response led me into this idea of, well, they have the EF tours and things like that. They have these trips that happen and the students go somewhere and it's an educational experience. And so I thought maybe I could do something like that, and what better place to do it than in Hawaii, where I have some background information. I still know teachers and locations there. And I know a lot of education. I was a science teacher while I was in Hawaii. And so like the things that you bring into the classroom while you're a teacher there, it's like I've already done that. And so I can go to certain locations and know everything that I want to talk about there. So it's a place that I can really come up with an idea for a plan and what's going to happen. So I guess what I'm looking for is, I've been talking about doing this with my students for, this will be the second year that I've really sort of put it out there as like, is this of any interest? Does anybody want to do this? And I've been talking with Mr. Parent about it for about that long as well. And so now I'm wondering if that's something that the school committee supports. You guys have any questions? Yes?
Can you talk a little bit more about your educational goals and your objectives for taking this trip to this particular place?
So basically, with the two trips that the two places that I was talking about originally, Hawaii and visiting Ground Zero in Hiroshima, Japan, I really felt as though I walked away with science, for sure, because I'm a science teacher. But I also walked away with some cultural and some historical sort of connections. And those made it also very important. And so I struggle with history sometimes. And going and visiting Hiroshima and going into the museum and seeing like a watch on display that was on someone's wrist when the bomb was dropped and it showing the time and the date was very powerful for me. And I can actually close my eyes and think about, oh yeah, now I know, what's going on. And so I sort of feel as though the trip is going to be something that the students will never forget. And then, what I want to bring into it is the science of, I'm a chemistry teacher, but there's tons of geology, there's tons of marine biology, there's tons of just regular biology with it. It's a very unique ecosystem there, being so isolated from the rest of the world. It's actually one of the most remote places in the world. So there's the science there, but then there is the Hawaiian culture and the traditions that still exist there, and you can be there and experience them. And there's ruins and things like that of the ancient Hawaiian culture that you can experience. And then there's, basically you can go into World War II and dropping bombs, so, history goes there with our U.S. history and things like that as well. Another huge thing about wanting to go in February is about 85% of the humpback whale population shows up in Hawaii, in where we want to go for that period of time. So the whales are everywhere, and it's sort of, it's an awing experience to be there with all the whales. They're just everywhere. And you can go in the water and you can literally hear them talking and things like that. So it's just, I don't know, the experience has a lot of educational components to it, but it's like, it's going to be one of those things where you're never going to forget what you learned while you were there.
I had a couple of questions. So the idea about Hiroshima is an idea, it's not part of this trip.
Right, that was something that sort of inspired me to think that a trip would be an important, like not just telling somebody about it, but being there. Because for me, I lived in Hawaii for 3 years, so that's not the same thing as a trip, whereas going to Japan and going to Hiroshima was an 8-day trip for me, and yet it was still very powerful learning experience for me. And so that was, that's what gave me the idea that I could do a trip and still get a really good educational experience, as opposed to having to go somewhere and live somewhere, which is a totally different learning experience for you. But I felt as though that was still super powerful. So I'm just saying, like, that's where my sort of inspiration comes from. But I don't necessarily feel as though I know Japan and want to take students to Japan, whereas I feel as though because I lived in Hawaii, I can take students to Hawaii, and I feel comfortable knowing exactly what I want to do while I'm there.
I feel the same way about the Bronx. actually. Nobody wants to go,
So this is not, this is all you, this is not a tour.
So the reason, I looked at the different tour companies, and there were two things that sort of held me back from that, and one is they have the tour plan. And if you want to give your input, it just keeps putting the money up. And already the amount of money is more than what I feel I need to charge the students, because, you know, they're an organization and there's about 10 people that are getting money before, you know, you pay for the trip. So, you know, I did look into, do we have insurance to cover this? Do we have, you know, can we go without having a company sponsor it? And the feedback that I've gotten is yes, that can happen. And so I feel as though that is going to give a better trip. Like, I am the tour guide. I mean, it's not my business or anything like that, but I am the person that you would hire to take the kids, and I'm not going to be, you know, paying other people ahead of me and stuff like that.
So your maximum is 10
Yes.
students, what's your minimum?
5 would be a good minimum,
Okay.
which, I mean, I could probably go lower, but I think at some point then it becomes too small of a trip to be worth, you know, the impact might not be big enough, but.
So if I could just jump in here, some of the conversations that I've had are not only with, I always want to call you Maddie and not Raphael, there, have been surrounding the insurance component. I've contacted Maya, they've taken a look at all of this, talked to my parent about certain kinds of lessons learned that he has learned here in Newburyport, but also in his previous district. And he was able to bring to the table some things such as being CPR certified. So we spoke about getting that certification from a health and wellness perspective. So we've been talking about this for about a year, trying to debrief on various components of it. And he has done everything that we've asked him to do as far as finding out information and putting presentations, materials together, and what kind of educational experiences are our kids going to have. So just to let you know that I've been involved in those conversations as well.
So what is the insurance coverage specifically then?
The insurance coverage is specifically one of the things that I strongly suggested, and I suggest this to any and every school department employee, is I also have a personal umbrella policy that I carry. I suggested that he take a look at investigating that for his own personal coverage. Because we're here at the school committee is going to accept this as not a school-sponsored event, but typically when the kids are going to Costa Rica in the past, it is brought to the school committee's attention. The school committee is fully aware that these kids will be attending a trip with a school department employee. So Maya gave us, a good page of suggestions that we shared and talked about and debriefed. So they were okay with the trip and the coverage of the trip, but also bringing it here to this governing body.
So Maya is okay with it. The issue remains is if this committee is okay with it.
This committee needs to be informed about it, yes.
Right. Okay.
And it's an overnight, it's not necessarily a field trip, but it is certainly an overnight
Right.
trip with Newbury High School students attending.
I don't know if you can answer my question, Deirdre. I don't think Mr. Testa can, because he's new to the system, new to the school, but have we, my experience in the recent trips that our students have gone on, there's been, and I think you've referred to it as a tour company, or what did you refer to it as, a tour company?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've used certain tour companies. What is what's the protection, if you will, around that relative to risk management as opposed to having an individual like Mr. Maddie propose this trip?
Well, I think that was the real difference, and which is why I got Maya involved. This is an employee of the City of Newburyport, Newburyport Public Schools. This is what he wants to do. It's my concern on his behalf that he's not incorporated, And so what kind of suggestions might Maya have to protect the liability of the individual employee, as well as ensure we go through our appropriate process and protocols, which is why we've moved this forward from that perspective.
So is he in fact the first teacher who's ever attempted something like this?
Yes. In fact, the first teacher, and it was Mike's experience that a teacher in Keene did the same kind of thing, and that's where we started talking about the CPR and wanting to ensure that he had some protections and some trainings as well.
Other questions or?
Are there any commitments from students at this point that they would like to go?
Yes, I have several students in the realm of 5 to 7 that have consulted parents, and parents have contacted me through email and said that, you know, my child is interested in this trip. I, you know, have like, basically I give them sort of a rundown of what it would be like and a cost breakdown similar to what you have. And so then it's a lot of people will want to go, and then whether they can because they're doing other things or, you know, parents support it or things like that. So I do have interest.
Another teacher going with you, or are you going along with the 10
So
students?
currently there is not another teacher going with me. So the information that I was given with insurance is 10 students per teacher. So, I mean, if I had more than 10 students that wanted to go, then I could consider that. Right now, there aren't, you know, I don't have like 20 or 30 kids that are all saying, I can go, just tell us that we can go. But I do have this like 5 to 7 that are very strongly committed if this gets approved. And the rationale was, if it gets too big on this, I mean, this will be the first attempt at the trip. If it was, you know, a really big trip, then I see a lot more room for problems. So I would prefer to keep it smaller if, you know, the things work out that way. So currently there is not a second teacher.
I just would feel more comfortable if there was another adult going, only because of the level of activities that you're doing. No, only in terms of, I mean, you're going snorkeling, you're going hiking in the rainforest, you're going to a crater, you're, you know, and, you know, water activities, and, you know, just in the event of some type of emergency, having one adult being able to stay with, you know, a group of kids and being able to go and get assistance or help or something, especially for the first time, or have someone in Hawaii that you hire to, a teacher maybe that you know there, or someone else that could join the trip that has been approved by the school. I just would feel a lot more comfortable if there was a second adult with you. And I think for your own protection too.
I don't know how, you know, the school committee feels about that idea, but it did show up in the little brochure thing that I made. But there are school teachers still in Hawaii that I communicate with, and I thought it would be a very powerful learning experience to meet some students from Hawaii, similar age, and maybe meet up to do an activity with them. So I think, you know, that would probably be the easiest thing to do, would be to get, you know, a teacher in Hawaii to also participate. Well, I guess it would be very easy to recommend, you know, just be like, hey, does anyone want to go to Hawaii? You know, right, exactly. So it wouldn't be, I don't think that would be a huge problem. And then it's just a question of what needs to, you know, does that adult need to be an employee of Newburyport for everything to continue to work out, or can they?
Parent chaperones,
Right.
have been employees, they've gone on other trips before. You know, I would just feel more comfortable and willing to support this and vote in favor of this if I knew there was a second adult coming.
I mean, I can definitely make that happen.
I think it's a wonderful trip. I think you've done a nice job planning this out. And the fact that you have contacts in Hawaii and to truly make this a great experience for the students who decide to go is wonderful. And I appreciate all your efforts in trying to hold this together.
Thank you.
Now, past trips have involved, like if they go to a foreign country, there's like a requisite of some level of foreign language. Will there be any requisites to this trip?
No, because we aren't leaving the country. There, you know, we don't need to do anything like that. I have asked some of the students that were serious if they wanted to do some sort of hiking trip or something like that before we go, And that seems like, you know, definitely something that we would make happen. We would have to definitely meet up, you know, at a sort of intervals in order to say, all right, these are the materials that you're going to need to pack. Let's make sure we have those, we know how to use them. As simple as like making sure people have backpacks and stuff like that. As far as
I'm not talking about logistics. I'm talking about, for instance, we had a trip that went to Italy. I think the purpose of that was to study some art and look at Italian language, or and there's been other times where if you were taking a trip to like Spain or something, you needed to be in a certain year of Spanish to go. So that's what I'm driving at. I'm driving at, given what you've noted about wanting to study certain aspects, science, history, culture, would there be any, and you've kind of said it's open, but mostly likely 10, 11, and 12. I guess what I'm looking for is to tighten up that tighten up the requisites, so there seems to be a purpose related to your intention of looking at science, history, culture.
I think that, yeah, I guess I assumed that the kids would have chemistry because I'm a chemistry teacher, and I haven't met the freshmen yet. Now they're teaching sophomores, and that's sort of why I said I probably won't have freshmen. But as far as requirements go, I don't think that below, I mean, I think high school and above could handle the curriculum. I think that they, I mean, it would be new, a lot of it. I would be teaching them like, you know, don't necessarily understand the soil science, but I'm going to give you the breakdown of what it's made out of and what that means. But I don't think that I need to say you have to have, you know, honors or AP or any sort of this level math or something like that in order to be able to go. But I mean, if that's something that you would recommend, then I definitely would consider it.
I'm only saying that because I think previous trips usually have some type of requisite. And, you know, I guess I would feel more comfortable in that this is, as you say, designed towards some of the goals you have, given your experience, giving maybe some collegial opportunities for these young people to learn from not only yourself, but some other teachers you know. So I mean, to really laser in on that, as opposed to just kind of making it, you know, kind of a hang loose experience.
But then I feel as though you're excluding kids that would benefit from it. I mean,
I'm not looking to exclude kids. I'm looking to look at this as, I think you're proposing it to be an educational trip.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm looking at those things that would essentially accredit that. And as, I guess I need to see more. I guess I need to see more that would accredit the things that you intend to do relative to those three areas you mentioned here: science, history, culture.
So, I mean, in my itinerary breakdown, I have like specific locations that we're going to and things that we're doing that say, you know, this would connect to this. So, you know, the humpback whales are something that we would see, but then there's a whaling museum that we would visit. And from the whaling museum, we're going to learn some of the history and culture of the whaling industry and also how that affected the Hawaiian people. There are, you know, the major focus of the trip is this hike into Haleakala Crater, which is sort of one of the most unique areas in the world because there's plants and animals that live there and live nowhere else in the entire world. And so, you know, there's a lot of science there that I would be focusing on, both in the geology, the chemistry, the biology. So specifically, there's, you know, biodiversity and the evolution. There's soil science and chemistry. There's the erosion of the soil, the volcanic eruptions and what causes them. So, I mean, I could go into each of the different things. Is that more what you mean, like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, you know, and I'm not trying to deflect on anything that was brought in public comment earlier, but I think we need to, you know, seriously understand the aspects of science, what's going to be delivered to these students as part of this trip.
Did you see his daily itinerary?
Yeah.
I don't think you have a copy of it.
No, I do. I have the daily itinerary.
Oh.
Wake up early, eat at bakery, that stuff. Yeah.
All 9 days.
Right. No, I'm, like I said, I'm just, it's been my experience whenever we've had trips come through, and I remember years ago when I think former Assistant Dean, Mr. McCarron, came in and presented a trip. I remember when Mr. McCarthy from the Physics Department came in and presented a trip. There just seemed to be a little bit more structure. I remember when the trip to Italy was presented, there seemed you were supposed to be able to have a certain level of language to go. I just think that, you know, you're talking about geology, biology, chemistry. Sounds like you're talking about this would be a nice experience for someone who's really got an interest and background in science, you know. So I'm just wondering, you know, if you want to direct it a certain way.
I mean, so far, due to, I mean, I didn't want to present it to the entire school and then not be able to go. So far, I have just presented it to chemistry students. And so, I mean, I could make that a criteria that, you know, chemistry students are allowed to go to this, and then we can, you know, focus it more on chemistry in that way. But I mean, there's no language requirement. We're going to be speaking English. To learn about the historical stuff, I don't think that we need a specific history requirement. So then I guess it just comes down to the science requirement.
Is there some sort of credit involved in this? Course credit?
No.
No.
It's over the February vacation.
I'd like to share, because I have some comments. I think this is a really, really interesting trip, and as somebody who spent 5 years as a naturalist on a whale watching boat, anytime you get human beings out to see whales, particularly humpback whales, I think that you enrich their lives in ways that they will always resonate with them. And I guess it's just a comment, and it's not meant to deflect on the importance of the trip. But it's not really going to be interest that determines who goes. It's the ability to afford the trip.
For this particular round, because I don't have like a background or a history of being able to do this trip, and I haven't been able to create any sort of fund. It's true that there are students that want to go, but you know, they realize they don't have the money. If it became something that was annual, then I think that we could create a much better version of having a scholarship for the kids that want.
In the past, the kids have raised money to offset some of the costs of the trip, but again, it's limited because it's an experiment, it's a trial.
Right.
I felt like that needed to be at least acknowledged, and not to detract from the trip, just to acknowledge that there's, for me, I see tremendous value in the opportunity to do this. I just wish there was a way for more kids to go.
Right. No, I mean, that would be, if it was the most highly competitive trip in the school and everybody got to go was free, that would be the ideal situation.
It would be ideal if we paid them to go, actually. It would be better than free. I'm not sure whether, because this is not in a sense, a school-sponsored trip, whether we're actually voting on this or not.
It is, that's why we're right here. So, one of the things I asked Angela, and first of all, I did look at some of the specifics for coverage, which is great. I asked Angela to look at it in terms of its value in terms of curriculum instruction and so forth. This is happening during February vacation, and so it's really on Raphael's own time and students' time. So it's not during school time except possibly one day.
Right. With the idea of trying to, again, save some money there.
So what I propose is that the school committee approves of the trip, yet take into consideration the mayor's concern about another chaperone, and also Steve's concern about maybe more specifics. So I would say approve the trip based on the condition that Raphael sends to me a little more, some more specifics I can share with the school committee at the next school committee meeting. Meanwhile, he can move forward and make plans because it's November. And so I'm sure that he has deadlines in order to meet, in order to pull this off by February vacation.
You have a motion.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Motion passes, 6 in favor, 1 no.
Thank you.
Good work.
The next item on the agenda is the report out that Dr. Kerbel will give of the subcommittee to name the lower field.
Thank you. And considering the way I behaved during public comment, I probably should go on the trip. So,
maybe you shouldn't go on the trip.
Bless you.
So let me just take this time. I had to reflect on what happened during public comment. So I apologize to Dr. Orlando and so the people in the audience if I exercised myself a little bit, got myself a little bit going. But, so I apologize to everybody. Okay, let me talk about the naming of the lower field. So I think last time I was here, I talked about that we had a lower field committee. And on that committee was Richie Eaton, Jim Stalin, Mike Parent, John Delanis, Bruce Min, Steve Cole, Steve Salvo, and yours truly. At that time, we decided to ask the community for nominations for naming the lower field after someone or even an entity. We received over 120 responses, and we had overwhelmingly 102 people nominate a particular person. I'm going to name that person in a second. We also had approximately 20 other nominations, and they ranged from, they were very thoughtful, ranged from former mayors, community members who died in battle, other coaches, prominent members of the community. And so I appreciate those people that sent in nominations. I shared the nominations with everyone on the committee. During that second committee, we talked about Bill Pettingale, the recently retired baseball coach, and we recognized that Bill had 40 years of service as the baseball coach. He's also coached other sports and was a longtime teacher at Newburyport High School. So we had a lot of discussion about naming of the field. We talked about honoring some type of way to honor and recognize other coaches that have given years of service to the district. And so I want to do two things tonight. One is I want to talk about memorializing other athletic coaches.
Celebrating.
And celebrating, not just one, right?
Celebrating, we discussed the difference between a memorial and a celebration,
Right.
and I prefer celebrating.
Celebrating. In fact, I actually stopped by the field today, took a look at the field, and I said, this field's in pretty good shape. I found a pretty good spot if we wanted to celebrate and acknowledge other coaches. So, but that is for another group and another time. So tonight, what I did is I want to talk about, tonight I want to recommend that the school committee name the lower field the Bill Pettingale lower field, after Bill Pettingale. And took its consensus vote, and which I got from the committee. And so I'm talking for all the people that were serving on the committee. Certainly Bruce and Steve could speak for themselves, but on behalf of the lower field committee, I'm recommending that we name the lower field the Bill Pettingale lower field.
Well, no, I think there's been a lot of effort was put into this to do the best job we can in terms of recognizing, finding ways to recognize everyone who's coached in Newburyport. Newburyport has a tradition of long-term supportive coaches that started, years ago and continues today with coaches not only who have retired but have still coached here 20-plus years, like Mr. Gaudiano, like Mr. Henniger, just to name a couple. And in the spirit of that, and looking at Mr. Pettengill's 40 years of service, his stewardship of that baseball field, what he's meant to a number of his players, one who I see seated out in the audience, Mr. Malenfant, who will be the new coach of the baseball field. I believe it's appropriate to move in this way.
I would echo what Steve said. I was one of the stronger advocates as well that if we're doing this, that we also, I think, need to find a way to celebrate other coaches in a way that is very public and that does really express our gratitude for the energies that they've put in. So while my vote to support this wasn't contingent on us doing that, I intend to be extremely active in trying to find some sort of fitting way to do that. And I do see the two connected myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else.
I have just a small recommendation, if you will, on this. I think it would be appropriate to make it a little bit less of a mouthful and just call it the Bill Pettigrew Field as opposed to Bill Pettigrew Lower Field. I don't know that that extra word adds anything, and I think it just makes it more of a mouthful. If we truly want to celebrate Coach Pettigrew, I think we want to be able to say, hey, that's the Pettigrew Field.
Is there another field?
It's just been known as Lower Field.
Okay.
Is that something that was discussed?
No, I mean, it's common parlance that it's been known as Lower Field. Correct, Mr. Malenfant?
Yes.
Correct.
So they don't have for it to be known as the Pettigrew Field, not the Lower Field.
But I think in the same way that we've seen with other things, people will still call it Pettigrew Lower Field because it's known as the Lower Field. But I have to say that I don't really feel like I need to invest a lot of energy into whether it's lower, upper, higher, or in the middle. Field is going to be named for him, and however we do that, I think that's fine. I leave that decision to the people painting the sign. Other comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or any abstentions? Thank you very much. Congratulations to Coach Pettigrew.
Was there a motion?
Yeah, I don't remember.
We have a motion? Oh, excuse me. If I could back up, can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. And discussion.
It is an honor to be able to vote on this. I just want to say thank you to Bill and thank you to all the people that wrote in and gave comments. And this is just, it feels good to be able to vote on something like this.
I'd like to just speak to, I did solicit some thoughts from some former players of Coach Bettengill's, and after about an hour, I mean, the information just kept coming. This gentleman has touched deeply many people, and I hope somebody encapsulates his story, because it really was a pleasure to hear. Just hear one gentleman who played for him, and just how he keeps in touch with everybody, and how it was just an amazing story. And I do hope that we get to hear more of that story from someone at some point. But I think it's well deserved, and I'm also honored to vote yes.
Any other comments? if I could ask us to take an official vote this time. Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? I'd like to offer a second set of congratulations to Coach Pendergast, the official congratulations.
So I want to congratulate Bill, and I know he'll probably get 15 phone calls before I call him. Okay, I received an email, someone wanted to know who will be first to call Coach Bettengale.
One of those two, right? They're on the phone now.
Are we live?
One of the things I want to mention is I know that Alex Bradley has to go home and do his homework. And I just want to mention to everyone that, and I'm going to read a list of names later on, but Alex has qualified to receive a John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, which entitles him to 4 years of free tuition upon his acceptance to a participating Massachusetts public institution of higher education.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
We've reached our second point in the meeting for public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who has public comment that they would like to share with us? The next item on the agenda is the discussion and the approval of the superintendent's FY12 goals. I apologize for them getting out this morning. The superintendent and I were working on them much of last week on up until about 11 o'clock last night. And the comments that I would make to everybody, simply to introduce the conversation, is that after taking a look at the feedback that we got from the evaluation, the superintendent and I then also looked at the proposed template, the proposed rubric for the new superintendent evaluations that are going to be brought online over the next year. Sort of the draft has been proposed, and decided to organize these many goals that he has set for himself in discussion with us, along the lines of that organizing rubric. Having said that, Mark, if you would like to make some comments, and then we can take feedback from you.
Sure. I asked, so this is really funny. I sent this to a friend who wrote back and said, you should add, it's usually giving me more goals, and I had to laugh, because I was hoping that she would try to shrink it for me rather than expound on it. There's 52 bullets here, and that what I did is, Bruce and I actually looked at all of your comments on the evaluation that you had written, and I put it. In fact, Nick sent a long Excel sheet, and I printed that out, read every comment, and highlighted if you made a recommendation. And then what I did is maybe tweak some of the wording, and then added into these, the set of goals that you have in front of you. I think that if you look at some of the language, it comes from DESE's attempt to establish a new evaluation system for administrative leadership and administrative leaders. It's still in draft form, not this, but what DESE is presenting is still in draft form. So, but I thought Bruce and I thought it made sense to make the connection to what DESE is trying to do. If you look at the rubric, some of this language comes from the rubric that is proficient, and others come from something that's more exemplary. I think that if you would not understand the exemplary comments. So if you ever look up a rubric, you're going to say, oh, some of these come under proficient category, but you that's the only way I can make it so you understand it. So at least you know where it comes from. I would recommend you look this over. You can tweak it, you can add to it, you can do whatever you want. At least it gives you a sense of what Bruce and I worked on and what we thought was important for you to consider.
And what I would add to that is that that it wasn't created in a vacuum, and in effect, actually, it's what all of you thought were important ideas. There are quite a number here. I know from a brief conversation that I had earlier today with Cheryl when I sent it out. It's possible some could be combined. I'm not so concerned, I think, about the rating system and how we're going to do that. We have a number of months as we move forward to look at this and create a rating system or see what the state's rating system is going to be. I think the purpose and the hope of this is that we have a real clear sense of direction given to Mark and from Mark about the things that he feels are going to move this system forward and that he would like to be evaluated on. So now we'll look for comments.
I guess my biggest concern is the measurement, not how it's going to be ranked, but there are items in here that, in terms of evidence to support how it is, how you are ranked, that clearly needs to be defined. And as we're rolling down the month into the end of November, you certainly don't want to be evaluated unless you know how some of these things will be measured. So I think we need to have that in place as well. Like update protocol for walking through classrooms. We might not know what the current protocol is, and how will we know how that was changed? I mean, that's a very simple example, but I think you can walk through a bunch of these. I think the goals themselves are great. I think a lot of thought was put into this. I think it adds a level of focus that perhaps last year's were missing, that I think were very well defined. But you know, continue outreach to community and have greater attendance at budget meetings. Okay, well, we need to have some clear stats in place on how many people attended the year before and what are we looking for, and you know, things like that. I want to make sure that, I know I'm not going to be doing this, but for the people who are going to be filling it out, not just to put a 3 in there, how did you get to it, and how can Mark show evidence that he did what he was going to be asked to do.
I agree completely with Stephanie, and as I went through these today, as I tried to get through them, I started highlighting ones that I thought were just going to be incredibly difficult to evaluate. For example, under evaluation, develop professional practice and student learning goals with the educators they evaluate.
Dr. Ross.
Was that hundreds? You know, I mean, should that be more, you know, defined? I don't know what you want that, you know, how you would begin to tackle something like that and how you would rate how. And then I look at the feedback tool we used last time with a little tiny square to write what we do. It's close, you know, we're in November already. There's too many bullets here. This is too expansive. There are not ways to measure this. I would like us to really work on this over the next, between now and the next meeting, try within setting even a 10-day time frame, and to take a stab at trying to put some, you know, I highlighted the same when you did, Stephanie, update protocol for walking through classrooms. Is that really something that we feel as a school committee that is important to us to measure, monitoring on?
If I could just make a comment, this is not something we're not going to be evaluating Mark in December on this.
I know, but if he's going to be, we're gonna have to take a vote on this, and we're gonna have to agree, and Mark's gonna have to agree, and I'm saying, as someone in his job who is publicly evaluated, we wanna make sure that you are, you know, for lack of a better term, jiggy with what you're gonna be evaluated on and how we're going to arrive at that conclusion, or whoever is elected to.
They're too global. Consults with school and central office administration as they analyze intern assessment results and formulate action plan to improve student achievement. So he consults for 15 minutes once throughout the school year, he met this. I mean, it's just not defined enough, and I think that we should pick out probably one thing in each of these things as opposed to so many. And then we never saw the rubric that you were building this from, and I think that's a problem. If we saw what DESE had set out, it might have been helpful for us in terms of defining this. I appreciate all the work that went into the first round, you know, for the stab at this in terms of organizing this information according to these different areas, but I think it needs work.
I'm confused when I read this document. And if I'm confused when I read it, I don't know how we can hope to have a clear evaluation versus assessment. What it means. This is a mixture of job description, standards, and goals. What we need for evaluation's sake is goals. And goals, in order to be effective, must be specific, they must be measurable, and they must be achievable. And I don't see where those three elements come into the wording on a consistent basis to allow me to say, oh yes, this is a goal. I would further submit that 52 goals is, I know you like the Superman suit. No, you know, this is not realistic for us to use a template of 52 goals as a basis for evaluation. So I would say this needs editing. We need to identify what the goals really are. I did find some things that were missing in them, which I'll be happy to forward back to you. Particularly in the communications area. I did find some things that are not consistent with our policy. And so those need to be corrected, or the policy needs to be rewritten. I think it's a great first stab. I think there are a lot of wonderful things there. I have no doubt that you're going to accomplish 54 of these 52 goals, because there'll be 2 new ones that you add to it, and you'll do very well. But I think from the purpose of clear evaluation of our superintendent and being able to use that evaluation to support any kind of professional development, any kind of salary action or any other action that we may want to take as a result of that evaluation, it needs to be pared down, it needs to be much clearer.
Just for background purposes for me, did the standards that you've listed, there are four of them, did those come from a state document? Okay, so you know that those are the 4 standards that the state is going to require that we look at. So if you look at it that way, then I'm taking a look at, because I did react, I this afternoon on the phone, I said to Bruce, this is way too much. There are just too many things here. And I think, you know, Mr. DeCanter, I would agree with you that there's a mix of one thing, another thing, and another thing. But I'm also sort of looking at the subcategories as examples of reaching the goal of instructional leadership. For instance, provides training to administrators and staff on the new teacher evaluation system. That's a strategy toward the goal of showing instructional leadership. So I'm thinking that, you know, last year when you did your goals, you gave us the evidence. You specifically cited. I'm looking at these as that evidence, the specific evidence, some of these. I mean, if you said to me under management and operations, I've reconvened the finance subcommittee. That's an example. I'm not sure it's a goal. It's an example of the standard that you're talking about. So these standards, like it's the four of them, do they have definitions from the state as to what the standard itself means? So I'd like to see that. And then I'd like, and I don't know if it's a subcommittee or however you want to do this input, I'd like to take a look at what that definition says and then kind of match it to the sub-areas that you have. But I applaud you for wanting to do all these things. I just, it's too much.
That's why it says draft on it.
Right, no, I understand that, and I appreciate this conversation because,
And so, each bold area,
yes,
except for the word other, has a definition, has the definition to it as well.
in the state, in the state, okay.
Right, so I can get, I have no problem with a subcommittee massaging the standards and goals. I have no problem with it at all. If you take a look, you have a good sense of what my work is going to be anyway.
This is almost like your entry report all over again. This is, I just think it needs to be tweaked a little bit. And then, as far as the rating system goes, whether we use a 4 rubric or whatever, but, to give numbers for every single one of these, I don't think it's gonna serve the purpose that you want. I just don't,
The rating wasn't supposed to be on every bullet.
Well, see, last year, I think we did have some confusion in that process, because some of us rated every single bullet with a number, and some of us only rated the category with a number, assuming that if I had, rated all those subcategories, I would have come up with a 3.5. So I just put my rating number beside the larger groups of information, then commented on what was underneath it. So, but for us to comment on all 52 of these, I think we need to do something with the process.
I'd like to look at it a little differently. I had no expectations. I knew this, we were going to be doing this. I had no expectations on what it was going to look like. I looked at it, and I liked it. I liked it. And I could, it would take me a little time, but I could probably, just based on the in the loops we get, I could see, I could, it would be a lot of work, but for us. But I could see, you touch on many of these things, and you're in the loops. I mean, you keep us up to date on what you do. I see the language issues that you're talking about, apples to apples, oranges to oranges, that kind of thing. But I think they're, it's a great document that, at the end of the day, talks about what you expect to do as superintendent and what we as a school committee expect you to do as a superintendent. That's all I want to know. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Time's up.
I look at this, I look at this and I understand the 4 areas of, that you gotta get rated by, but above all that, okay, for me, as someone on the school committee, for me who's lived in this community, and a lot of this comes from, I spent part of Saturday at the dedication for Byron Matthews, Byron's Court down in Inn Street, talking with a lot of old Newburyport people, some new Newburyport people, some old city councilors, some new city councilors. We were talking about the importance of public education in Newburyport. And above all this, what I see your role being, Dr. Kerbel, is reminding people in Newburyport the importance of public education here and really spearheading that, because I think at this time when we're working toward these school building projects, not only in the brick and mortar aspect of those, but what's going to go into them, quality of education that's going to go into them. I frankly don't want you to get bogged down in all these things. I realize that these are important things that perhaps the state is going to rate you by, or you need to meet these things. But above all, I see your role as being the person who's going to spearhead, I guess, extolling the importance of public education in Newburyport as our school leader. And that's ultimately what I want you to focus on.
Any additional comments? Yeah, I do have a comment. Mark and I had a number of conversations about this, and I think, based partially on what the state is expecting, and partially of what Mark expects of himself and believes we expect of him, because these came from our evaluations. These weren't just drawn out of thin air. Whether or not we choose to put these on the document, these are the things that the superintendent is going to be doing over the next year. Whether we combine them, whether we, put them out in different measurable ways, whether we take things off or not. This, in effect, I think, reflects what Mark sees the system needs. It reflects what we think Mark needs to be doing. It also, there's also a nexus with what the state is looking at, expecting of superintendents. So I have certainly no problem with the subcommittee. I have no problem with tweaking it. It's a list. It doesn't have space for notes. And there's it's simply a document. But I did think it fair to say that simply removing it or combining it with something, I don't think is going to take it off of Mark's menu plate buffet, because these are really things that he feels tie into the direction we're heading.
And I understand, and I just want to reiterate my point. My point, though, is that it's like the 85-15 proposition, where you try to get all your responsibilities done in 85% of your time, and then have that 15% to reach. So what I'm really interested in is Dr. Kerbel reaching and showing people the importance of public education in Newburyport, because there's a lot of momentum going on right now. And granted, these are responsibilities, they have to be done, but in the end, if we can't get the public behind what we want to do with our schools, then I don't think Dr. Kerbel or any of us are going to feel satisfied with the results. So, so I think it's a blend of covering all those bases, but it's also a blend of looking beyond at what could be improved and what we ultimately want. And I see the superintendent as the key person in that.
Would you like to proceed?
I would like to suggest that we have a small group that works with Dr. Kerbel to take the comments that we heard today and refine this document. As the mayor said, within 10 days, certainly hopefully by the next meeting, so we're not dragging this out any further. That's what I think the next step should be.
I would just like to add that whoever that group is, please make sure that if there is some type of a rubric that he is going to, that the superintendent will be kind of held accountable at the state level, that that the group sees that, because I think it will help.
Everybody should see it.
Yeah. And I do want to say, Steve, I like what you just said.
Thanks.
I really do. No,
well,
I like what you just said.
It was a common theme of discussions I had Saturday morning, was that's what, and again, I'm going to talk about when, in my days growing up here, when Newburyport was a premier school district in the state, it was because people really worked to make it, number one in the community. And things were showcased. The band played at all different type of events, community events. There was just And I know times have changed, but as we're talking about rebuilding aspects, new buildings, perhaps new programs, you know, this is an opportune time to, again, spearhead an effort to, you know, this is the time to do it.
I would like to offer to be on the subcommittee.
So, right, Cheryl? It's not really actually a subcommittee, it's a committee to join.
Committee of the whole.
Try to coordinate our calendars before we leave tonight.
Who's gonna be on the committee?
Everybody.
Mayor?
And Dr. Kerr.
I think that, actually,
I am.
What's that? Say that again?
the four of you work together on this. And then,
As long as you would give us the definitions from the state, and then to look at the rubric, to figure out what our ultimate.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a discussion of the FY13 budget outline.
would you recognize the Assistant Superintendent, Peter Farrell, to talk about budget outline?
In your packet, you have a draft that I put together. Mark and I worked on it, reviewed it. It was reviewed in draft form with the Finance Subcommittee the other day, and it was reviewed in draft form with the principals and administrators that have budget development priorities and responsibilities in their budgets. I've tried to specify the associated tasks necessary in order to drive decision-making at the local school level, as well as how the principals should be incorporating their thought process and working with school councils, PTOs, on their school improvement plans, as well as trying to take a look at their educational program that they've got in their building and make certain assessments as to how those programs are working, what additional supports may be needed, and or what changes to the actual program that's running are currently in place. For example, as you know, we put into place at the Mullen School a new program this year. How is that working out? What pros are there, what cons are there, what would be different, and how would I need to incorporate that from a budgetary standpoint, but also from a communications perspective. How is that going and getting to the stakeholders to understand fully how that program is working? So we need to be doing that with our programs in each of our schools that we're running. How are we working with our initiatives from the inclusion perspective, as well as early literacy? How are those working out? What adjustments, if any, need to be made? And incorporating those kinds of conversations in our decision-making as we move forward from the budget perspective. I've tried to also incorporate ensuring that faculties are updated as we move forward in this process, as far as how are things rolling out at the legislative level, the local level, et cetera, to make sure all faculties are updated as we move forward. Again, this is in draft. I've asked the school administrators to review that, get back with me with any suggestions for changes and or movement, and I expect to hear from them. Mark and I will continue to work on it as we move forward. And I would invite any of the finance subcommittee members to mention anything that was talked about last week when we met on Friday.
I'd just like to say in this climate of starting our budget earlier, that is one of the reasons why we reconvened the finance subcommittee. We've had 2 meetings, and we've been presented with some information, what our actual budget costs were for the whole of last year, where funding has come from. We've received all the monies that have come, the information on the monies that have come from the state. Deirdre's currently working on the private grants, but we've talked a lot about concept, so I guess it hasn't shown up here so much, but we are seriously working on what we need to do for the budget, and this is the draft of what you'll see based on you know, budget and decision making. So we've had 2 meetings already. At each meeting, Deirdre presents things to us, and then what we do is work on an agenda for the next meeting, the things that we are missing, a picture that, you know, the whole picture. So we've been doing a lot of work, it just hasn't been in this room.
Other comments?
Yeah, I'm probably going to categorize this as the here he goes again comment of the year. We have a roadmap that takes us, that is supposed to be updating us and taking us 5 years out, which is our strategic plan. I would like to see in the month of November an assessment as to where we are in the strategic plan, what our expectations are in the strategic plan, because that should be the basis through which we can discuss what kind of a budget we're shooting for, and also give us the kind of information we need to move forward with the mayor when we're trying to get long-term financial planning put in place to work with the city from there.
Thank you. We should have done the finance committee report first. We would have heard that exactly what you're suggesting is already part of the conversation. It's great.
Then consider this a compliment to your upcoming comments.
You're visionaries.
Right.
Did you say what, dictionaries?
No, visionaries. Visionaries.
I would also like to point out that I felt incredibly rushed last year. I thought the time for the school presentations was ridiculous at 10 and 15 minutes. I mean, we're talking about building budgets for each of our schools, and we're asking them to summarize information regarding what happened last year, successes, challenges, you know, what they're looking for next year, going back to what Deirdre said originally. And there's no way that that is appropriate to present that information to us and to the public in 10 or 15 minutes. And I don't care if we have to start going back to doing Saturday morning budget workshops, but we have got to have more time interfacing with each of the schools and talking about, and I think that they were set up last year to put together all these value-added budgets when we knew we didn't have the money, and we had how many millions of dollars in wish lists? And that's ridiculous. You know, we know we can't do that.
I don't think that's ridiculous.
We have, could I finish,
basically,
please, Nick? Thank you. Maybe you disagree with me, but I think that coming up with a long laundry list of things that we cannot possibly fund is not helpful to teachers, it's not helpful to families, it sets up an expectation that we cannot deliver. I think as a school committee, we need to figure out what it is that are our priorities. So foreign language in the middle schools, electives in the high school, come up with something that's realistic that we can shoot for in terms of helping me find the additional funds, go back to the city council and ask them for, you know, support around these issues. We have to have a budget workshop with the city council this year. This can't be maybe, let's try and do it. We have to put it in the schedule. We need to be around the table together having this conversation long before the budget figures are being put together. And those are the things that are really important to me. And one other thing is, we know, I mean, I don't want to talk about zero-based budgeting because that doesn't make any sense. We have salaries. That is a fixed cost. Tell me what the step raises, what the raises are. Give me that number tomorrow. We don't need to wait until we get the full budget. That's what, 77% of our budget? That's what is our fixed cost. Then let's start working backwards into what it is we need. And let's, make this, a really worthwhile process as we engage with the schools. So I want that number on fixed costs as soon as possible. So, thank you.
And now for another point of view, Mr. Buchanan, if you'd like to.
I do not think that starting from a point that says, this is what exemplary education looks like and what we should be, that we should be shooting for at any time should be characterized as ridiculous. And we cannot afford it.
What he said, but-
Ridiculous wasn't it?
Yeah, if I can just, last year I had made the same statements the night that we had a bunch of teachers here. I forget what night it was probably in April or May. And my statement was based around the fact that it's just unfair from everybody on down. You take one school, it's unfair to the principal, it's unfair to the teachers, it's unfair to the students. There's one teacher that approached me last year after that meeting. She said, I wanted to clap for you because just today I was asked where I could move my class to have electives A, B, and C, or could I have electives A, B, and C, and she needed to make a decision right there. And, I just think that we have to make things fair, and if finding ways to add time into the process, to really carefully look at things, I believe if you do that, everybody's going to appreciate it. And who knows, someday, that's all I need to say right now.
Stephanie?
I guess I asked for the school improvement plan presentations, a little improvement on that. I know that we took great pains to kind of get everybody on the same page and on the same rubric in terms of the measurement. It's not the most compelling way to present what's going on. Like just sitting down and looking, they all look the same. And I'm not gonna say not a lot of thought goes into it because I know how much the school councils work on them. But if there would be a way to pull out the most significant needs, priorities, changes, what they're hearing at their school council meetings, something like that. And again, it doesn't have to be, an hour-long presentation, but something that gets to the heart of it a little bit easier than looking at that rubric. And I know it ends up putting, I don't think the people who presented, necessarily like having to do it off the same sheet. I don't know. I think there are some things that they have in common, and perhaps I know what I'm looking for when I hear those is more the individual needs of each building, as opposed to how it matches up or aligns across the board. That's just a personal thing. I know when we first did it, it was like, oh, thank God, because at least it put them measuring the same type of priorities, and in terms of alignment, it was very helpful, but in a presentation, it'd be great if we could just pull that other stuff out. Right. Does that make sense? Okay.
Any additional comments? I have one actually, and it sort of relates to some of the things that we've talked about. I am really interested because I hear this periodically, and I know it to be a fact periodically, but I would like to, I've always felt very strongly about the administration working with school councils, PTOs on the school improvement plans. And I just would like to make sure that that work is being done authentically and that those councils are engaged. In 10 years, I haven't had a year go by where some school councils said, well, we got a presentation early in this process, and then we were presented with a budget after that. So I'm just looking to make sure that process for each school occurs in a very authentic, real, engaging way, and that's what I would ask, because I think that there's tremendous value in that. And I can honestly say every year for 10 years, I've been approached by somebody in some schools saying, well, they asked us what we wanted, we talked to them, and then we got a budget to look at a couple of weeks later that was just, it will reflect our conversation. So without singling anybody out, I'm looking for a little bit of rigor to make sure that that's happening. And that was my comment. I certainly agree with more time, the idea of starting sooner, expanding the amount of time that each school gets to present. The meeting with the city council is something we used to do that was very effective. We stopped doing it for a while, and I think last year we tried to pull it together and it didn't happen. This year I think it absolutely has to happen, and we need to schedule that soon.
Could I propose that we maybe move the finance subcommittee report unless the,
No,
it kind of gels a little bit.
if it's okay,
Talking
it
about
does
right
follow
now.
this, I think. Steve, do you mind doing that?
No, we can do that.
And then,
Does that make sense to people?
No, it's fine, and
Have we finished our, is this sort of dovetailing with, we
That's what I'm
sharing our
trying to
point of view on the
accomplish.
budget outline, and now want to see how the finance committee report informs that? Is that, okay.
That's what my
Okay.
goal, because I
So-
still have things that are floating around in my head, but I think they might be answered in the
Sure.
finance subcommittee. And if they're not,
We
then-
can go ahead and do that, that would be great. If you don't mind starting.
well, I think I said pretty much the kind of the crux of what we're working on in the finance subcommittee. And one of the things we did talk about was identifying, much as the mayor said, major points that, you know, we realize that we're gonna have in order to improve student achievement, which is our mantra. So, and I know the process last year was somewhat different. I still think the process we went through with Dr. Purble being new, having all the ad hoc committees, gaining all that data about what our administrators thought were the most important pieces of our district was not an exercise in futility. I thought we all needed to hear that. I think what we're talking about in the finance subcommittee, please correct me if I'm wrong, is taking a look at the schools as a whole and also departmentalizing, like each principal's looking at his or her own budget, what they need for their school, that kind of thing. But I'm seeing a shift, I'm hoping, in the fact that we are talking specifics, and I'll give you an instance. It's not cast in concrete, it's not, but there's a feeling district-wide that there is a need for a secondary math coach for K through 8. Now, that benefits a certain population. We may have to give up something else to get that. It depends on where that is on that priority list. Getting the high school to 990 is way at the top. We've talked about what that's gonna take. You know, we've had a subcommittee working on that, taking a look at what the hours are currently, how we can get them up for each and every student to 990 at the high school. That's a district goal. The third one, and it lingered from last year, we've talked about, this is the year we really need to do something district-wide about foreign language. So I'm thinking that, you know, the focus needs to be more global, and we need to have conversations about what are our top priorities, you know, district-wide, I'm saying. And, you know, maybe not come out with a financial non-reach list, but come out with 3 things. If we have the money, this is what we're gonna focus on, this is what the community needs to know, and this is where we're going with it. So I'm already thinking that our conversations in the finance committee are different. Mayor, it's interesting that you talked about salaries, because one of the benefits we talked about last year is we now have a 3-year contract. So we pretty much know what the raises are gonna cost. So we've asked Deirdre to get that information together for us. We also wanted to know what the total contribution for health insurance for the school district is from the city. Because you give us a certain percentage of money, but I think it's fair for people to understand that the health insurance kind of comes out of the city side of the budget, and you don't put it in that percentage figure. So, we don't get that figure till March.
Right.
No, but I'm just,
Unfortunately, Yes.
saying, these are the kinds of conversations that we're already starting to have. And Deirdre put together this whole spreadsheet for us, it's right there, of what it totally cost us to run this district last year, down to up the penny.
To include things like, what it costs to cut the grass and,
Everything, fuel,
things like
Don't get me
that.
started on that.
No.
I don't know if you wanna share that number,
But
but.
I think before Deirdre does share that, I think that one of the things that I like to think we've been moving towards over the years is simply accurately accounting to the community for what it actually costs to run the schools. The amount of money that health insurance contribution, the amount of money that has been shifted to the PTOs to pick up things that we used to take care of. And it's very clear to us, just from these initial numbers that we're looking at, that it isn't 22 million and it isn't 24 million, that there are significant other costs that the community doesn't really get to hear about. So we're looking at changing the process to make sure at least that, we're not asking for money to be shifted back and forth, but we want a very realistic picture of what it really is costing us to provide an education. So I didn't mean to interrupt Steve or but I think that's one thing I think that's really important.
At the meeting, we reviewed, every year I have to file, every school in the Commonwealth has to file the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education end-of-the-year financial report for the fiscal year that just ended. And in this report, it's every cent that is spent in any city or town or regional school district that educates students, not only in the Newburyport Public Schools, but in any other public school, such as the charter school, such as the Whittier. So I have to account for the charter school Chapter 70 that's spent to educate Newburyport residents. I have to account for the Whittier assessment that educates Newburyport residents. And we have to account for everything on the city side that benefits the school department, and it pays for health insurance, retirement contributions, dental, the other support services that are budgeted in the city side, I get from the treasurer's office and the accounting department each and every year, and I account for those. You also have to report how you spent federal funds, state grants, circuit breaker, private grants and gifts, school choices accounted for in here, athletics, school lunch, and other local receipts. That all put together is $34.6 million that support educating not only Newburyport Public Schools, charter school residents of Newburyport and Whittier. So all of that is accounted for in this end of the year per pupil report. And the auditors will come in and audit that, see how we reported those expenses, and then submit those audits to the department.
Do you have that electronic?
Yes.
Can you send that to us?
It's huge. Okay.
So, sort of a
So are you looking at,
Pretty much.
The other thing we had, Dan, I think this is revenue. So this grants, this is a sheet of all the federal and state grant monies that we received last year. And we've also asked Deirdre to give us, or maybe Angela, the private grant funding sources as well. So we know what kinds of revenues we're receiving, or we have received to this date from outside sources. This is the total on the back page?
No, it's not total.
Oh.
It's not total.
So
Segments.
if I could just say this, and then, Dan, we're here at the beginning of November, and we've already begun to generate this information, which I think is going to inform the process a lot earlier and a lot sooner. And the example that I wanted to give was Steve, Cheryl, and I just happened to be meeting, we just happened to have a meeting a month and a half, 2 months ago with the subcommittee at the high school that was working on 990. And we asked them right off the bat, what is going to get every student to 990? And somebody said, well, we're thinking about doing this mentor program, we think we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. If we had 3 to 6 teachers, of course that's not going to be possible, we're going to do it. And we said, wait a minute. Go back over that. What is going to get everybody to 9 million? And they said 3 to 6 more FTEs so we can add more sections, so we can add more electives. That would be one of the things that would do it very quickly. So that didn't escape us. We weren't willing to sort of let them just sweep that under the carpet and say, well, that'll never happen. So that is already, that became something in September that we became aware of and have begun to feed into this whole process that you're going to hear more about. So, I'm sorry. And then,
I'll defer to you. Okay, thank you. 2 questions. First of all, so basically, that document you have, you're going to match that up against the budget that we did last year and see how we did. And you do that every year?
Yes.
And how do you usually do it? Is it always the same?
Well, the report basically determines your per pupil cost.
Yeah.
For Newburyport Public Schools. But it's basically a report that reports to the state every single expense to support public education in a community.
No, I understand that, but how close are we usually to getting it right?
What was the budget
The year
proportion
before,
last
when we
year?
make the budget. Are we usually pretty close? I mean, are we looking at a giant deficit?
There's a trend report that you can analyze from that perspective.
Yeah.
But, each and every year, as the mayor had indicated, you get salaries and the fixed costs for salaries. So those are increasing. Your special education costs are increasing. And we're really not adding anything programmatically.
No, I'm just wondering, I mean, if it was me and I had your job, I'd be wondering, wow, how do we do? Were we close? Did we go way over budget? Did we go over budget last year?
Oh.
You know what I mean?
I don't use this report to make those kinds of assessments and analysis. I would do that on a monthly basis with the finance subcommittee,
Right.
reporting them the current year budget. Here's where we are, here's what we're doing, here's where my concerns are, here's what I'm recommending to the superintendent about freezing the budget, those kinds of things.
That's why you have budget freezes.
Yeah. During budget development, the actual budget development, what we're doing is taking a look at expenditure history and saying, well, this line item on a year-long average or a 3-year average, substitutes, for example, is a great example. You don't know your maternities, you don't know illness, you don't know those kinds of things, but how can you capture it? If you do the 3 to 5 year forecast and analysis during budget development so that you can appropriately budget for the following fiscal year.
Okay, I just had one more 2-pronged question. In the past, we've had sort of a fair warning of spending cliffs and ominous horizons and horrible things.
Keep me up at night.
Yeah. Are there any of those, number 1? Number 2, on the revenue side, we've got our local options. How are we doing there?
400,000 in meals tax and over 200,000 in parking fees.
And that's projected, that's as projected, ahead of projected. I know when it first started getting passed, it seemed like the revenues were actually much higher than the projections in a lot of communities.
We still have all the capital outlay for the paid parking, but we paid for that out of an existing account with the condition that we pay it back. So we don't necessarily have to pay back $178,000 in one fell swoop. Plus we have contracts with Waterfront Trust and the NRA. So, and we've had some people.
But so we do have we may be looking at a slight increase in revenue this year.
From what you did last year? In terms of the
total revenue brought in.
Because I think I gave you, 2.5% or 2% increase last year.
No, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for a city in general.
Oh, you mean from the state?
No.
Oh, no, I mean,
No, not from the state.
You mean in terms of local agency funding?
I think
I'm talking about
revenues that generated.
Revenues that generated, growth in the city, local
Road
options,
parking.
Okay,
all
well,
those kind of things.
all right, so you look at, that's where we are in terms of the new revenue streams, in terms of paid parking and
Right,
meals
right.
tax. In addition, we had 1.8% certified, 1.8, I'm sorry, we had 1.8 million certified in terms of free cash, which means that we controlled our spending, and that was what was left over from last year's budget, plus we still had like 500,000 from the year before, so we're careful with that. The other piece is that we had projected for a revenue stream, which is new growth, which is new development in the city. We put in for $300,000. It was certified last week at $545,000. We also had an additional $160,000, almost $160,000 come in the supplemental budget for local aid. And we're now working on the supplemental budget before the city council sets the tax rate by the end of November.
Right.
So, I mean, and I'm putting money back into the stabilization account to get us back up way over 5% in terms of holding that for next budget process, in case we have to dip into that again to balance the budget. But I'm also asking our finance team to look at our credit rating, because I think we're in really on solid ground, and if we can get from a AA bond rating to AA plus as we go out for bonding of the schools, that should save us significant amount of money in terms of, you know, loans and interest rates on that. So we, as a whole, I think we've, you know, despite the fact that we've, you know, really, you know, limped along and have had to make, you know, I think not devastating cuts as has happened 5-7 years ago in the schools, but we certainly weren't able to put back some of the things that we all had desired to, because we were in this uncertain climate. I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen with the governor's budget, but now we get to look forward to 14% coming in from casino gambling to fund our schools. So, down the road. But, so overall, I think fiscally as a community, we have done well in terms of managing our finances, and I think increasing 2 new revenue streams was really critical for the city. However, recall that part of those revenue streams, the city council allocated 50% of meals tax to sidewalks, and that a percentage of the parking revenue has to go into downtown improvement. So that is restrictive in terms of what we can do with it. But that being said, there's still additional funding that we didn't have last year.
Thank you. I
You're
didn't
welcome.
expect it. That was quite a great answer. I just looked
I
for a
think
little
about this
quick.
all the time.
Thank you.
And you'll
Thank
see, Dan, on this piece here, the timelines for the governor's budget are, you know, January, then it goes to House, then it goes to Senate,
Right.
et cetera. And so your Chapter 70 numbers you're starting to hear about as far as education funding, as well as local aid, are, you know, winter, January, February, March kind of timeframe.
I noticed you even put in here the point at which the House and Senate leadership say the governor's budget is dead on arrival, that shortly after it's delivered.
And then I do know about funding cliff issues from stimulus monies. Next year, for FY13, we're gonna lose ed jobs. So that will have an impact to our revenue source.
But are those,
It was $242,000 over a 2-year period, so we're looking at approximately $125,000 of what we're funding in our current budget for those purposes that we would have to roll over or make a determination on how to handle.
But you did make some capital expenses too that weren't going to be recurring, right?
That's not with ed jobs, that was with ARA, SFSF. We lost that in FY11.
Right. I look forward to these discussions more. I'm glad we're starting.
And the other thing, just at the finance subcommittee meeting, we also looked at our choice numbers, as well as there is a report that we are required to file that's referred to as private school enrollment of Newburyport residents. Any student of education age, we have to understand where they are enrolled in school. And so we reviewed that report as far as not only just school choice, we're starting to take a look at these as well.
Michelle and Mark?
The other thing we took a look at already that Deirdre's gonna keep us up to date on were the things that came up during the school year last year that weren't budgeted. For example, the extended day preschool program wasn't in the original budget, so money had to be found during the school year. So we've kind of asked her to go back and look at past years and you know, see if we can find a trend in how much money that you know, we've had to incur. For instance, if there's a special education teaching assistant that needs to be hired, we can't predict that, we don't know that, but we have to provide that. So that's the other piece of what we're trying to figure out too. How much, what's the chunk of money that we have to spend that we didn't budget for, and we still need those services? So I think we're really looking at a lot already, and we spent one of our first meetings just generating things that we needed to talk about. Deirdre presented us with a quarterly report for the entire school district for the first couple of months, and included in this was the actual amount budgeted, and then if any transfers or adjustments had to be made for whatever reason, and then there's a revised budget, and it also talks about the percentage of monies that's already been used in each of those budget areas. So she's letting us keep track of if there's a big red flag in a quarterly report, let's know it now and talk about it and figure out what we can do about it, or, you know. So a lot's happening, I think. I'm really pleased with the budgetary work we've done so far.
No, that's, covers about everything.
Last year, I came before you and I had a list of value-added items. Okay, and from there, we worked hard to prioritize and selected what we thought was what was best to be funded in the district. If you can't get away from that, whether you don't show it publicly or not, you just don't get away from it. I'll give you an example. If you're at the school council for their input, you're going to get X amount of money that they would like to see, because we're going to talk about the needs of the district. Right now, if we talk about 4 foreign language teachers and 4 teachers at the high school, you're talking about $500,000, $440,000 if your average salary is $55,000. So we already know and from the work we did last year, we already know what our needs are. And we didn't fund our needs. And guess what? We get haunted by them. Right? So, Deirdre, the principals come to you with their needs, even now? Right? So, what we didn't fund didn't go away. And that if we needed, we took away 3 aides, 3 instructional assistants, and because of the needs of the district, we actually had to we needed certain personnel at the at the Mullen, at the Brown, at the Bresnahan school, and those needs still presented something. They didn't go away because we didn't fund it. I heard it. Angela and I heard it when we were at the Bresnahan school. Third grade teacher said, we don't have the intervention that we need, the support that we need in 3rd grade. You should, Bubble thought, please fund it next time. So, the needs that we presented last year still presented some. Would I love to see foreign language? Absolutely. In fact, I presented, I said, gee, we wanted to fund foreign language, but we weren't sure whether we could sustain the funding. And if we funded foreign language, other things that we funded were going to take it right off the table. So I'm glad that we're starting early, and I think that some of the things that we can do in-house can help get to a point a little bit sooner. If I think about what has to happen in November, the the mayor talks about having a Saturday meeting, I'm making notes to myself, I'm gonna have to have a Saturday meeting with principals so that we can get together and work on things, because there's just so much to do in the district. And you know, I look at what Deidre had put together, this is admirable, right? And I think about our principals that don't want to be out of the building, and I'm thinking, how do we balance that? Knowing that people get so overwhelmed with work, and that we're just gonna have to figure it out. And that we're just gonna have to be smart about it, but we're gonna have to start now.
Zach, is it helpful to sort of as a follow-up to where we are in budget?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Great. Move through the next several items. MSBA update.
As you know, we selected the model school in East Fairhaven for the new Bresnahan Model School program. And by selecting that school, you've selected the architect. And the architect is HMFH out of Cambridge. And we are in negotiations with HMFH on their architectural fees, commonly referred to as A&E fees. I can't speak highly enough about the work that Tony Pruner from Curie International is doing on behalf of the owner, on behalf of the city, as our owner's project manager. He has taken on negotiations with the architectural firm and is firm in those negotiations. They're not in agreement just yet. We anticipate a report to the school building committee on Thursday evening as to where we are in contract negotiations with HMFH and be able to move forward from that perspective. Tony Pruner will be there, and HMFH will also be there. So that's the update as far as where we are in contract negotiations. On Wednesday, we have a kickoff meeting in Boston at MSBA, and that kickoff meeting is with myself, Steve Bergholm, Tony Pruner, and HMFH representatives as well. And our local reps at MSBA, you might have heard me mention Brad Egan and Carolyn Walsh. They're the two that are working with us closely for our project. And so we're having that kickoff meeting Wednesday at 10 in Boston. Next Wednesday, the request for services, the RFS for the Knox/Mullen, is going to be advertised in the central registry, and we will be going through a similar project, but it's going to be different for Knock-Mullen, because Knock-Mullen is in the renovations and additions pipeline and not the new Bresnahan Model School pipeline and/or Model School pipeline. So that activity starts next week from the Knock-Mullen perspective. I don't know if you had anything, Dan?
I just wanted to acknowledge that the architects for the Knock-Mullen is a much bigger pool.
You'll have a much bigger pool for the number of respondents to the request for services than you did from a model school perspective, because MSBA was selecting the model school that best fit the educational program and enrollment build that was agreed upon. So that's why they selected the four. But this is more of a bid process and a proposal process that any architect in the Commonwealth can respond to that's not considered a model school architect. So you'll have quite a few more proposal submissions.
Well, Jess, we put out the RFQ for the senior/social service center also, because we want to run things on the same track as the model school, and we had 47 inquiries. With the proposals are due next week. So this is any idea.
Site visit too?
Yes. So there's a lot of interest in the kind of construction activity in the city right now, so, or anywhere right now, actually. So, It is, it's awful. See when we actually come in. And we also asked Huey to be the OPM for that project too, because it makes sense.
There's no chance that HMFH would probably be interested in not all as well, right?
There probably is interest there.
Any other questions about the NSB update? It's rolling along. We have a superintendent's report.
Thank you. Let's see, on October 26th and 27th, was that last week? 2 weeks ago, there were over,
Nobody knows.
nobody knows. There were over 30 Newburyport teachers and administrators, 2 school committee members, Nick and Dan, attended the conference, and it's a technology conference. I thought it was terrific. We had Peter Hill presented at one of the breakout sessions, and then we had 6 high school teachers besides Peter that presented a 2-hour breakout session on the last day, and it was, let's see, Stephanie Williams and Sarah Leadbeater and Jay Leone and Matt LaChapelle and Wendy Cross, and I'm missing one more person. Laura Clements, and she's a married name now, so new name. And she introduced herself with her maiden name first, and I laughed about that. But they did a super job. They did a terrific job, and I always said, if you're great, then you'll present at a conference. And the high school teachers took me up on it, and they did a super job presenting. I want to mention about the John and David Abigail Adams Scholars. I want to read those names quickly. David Aravella, Jared Bradbury, Leah Campbell, Eleanor Casey, Julia Chatfield, Alexis Cole, Julia Donato, Gage Foley, Benjamin Green, Alec McDougall, Madeline Moore, Jacqueline Krasinski, Danielle Rubidoux, Carla Keenan, Julian Whalen. Katie Bennett, Alex Bradley, Ryan Campbell, Beth Constantini, Delia Chodat, Keith Conway, Bella Douglas, Michelle Fowler, Jordan Kudatis, Selena McCarthy, Tyler Nardone. Is it Nardone or Nardone? Nardone. Jane Petty, Molly Rose, Spencer Traxler, Rebecca Young, Jordan Bensley, John Brophy, Hannah Carroll, Colleen Cheney, Ella Clayton, Gretchen Cyrus, Matthew Egan, Connor Gravel, Noah Jordan, Samantha McCrane, Andrew Orlando, Molly Basillo, Rihanna Santo Spago, Tess Van Etten, and Nicholas Zephyrs. So I want to congratulate all of them.
I move to give them all a hand.
This week, let's see how many of the addresses Mr. Crane knows.
I thought we're running late.
Probably at some point you deliver papers to their grandfathers.
Right. Thanks, Dr. Gerber. Any more votes tonight?
I do want to talk about the Witch of Blackbird Pond. I know that they already mentioned it. My wife and I saw the play. Gee, the kids do such, the students do such a great job. They do, and I'll tell you, the 4th and 5th graders from the Mullen School, I heard that they loved the play and they were a terrific audience. Congratulations to all of the students. This was open to, this was G-rated, very family-oriented play, and so I want to thank everybody that not only was on the stage, but all of the folks that worked behind the stage, the set designers, those that developed the costumes, the lighting. I heard a lot about that. So I want to thank all of those kids, students, I should say, And then I want to thank the NEF for $10,000 more to help with the installation of the wireless. And right now, Don Scan's trying to coordinate the electricians and the wireless company to make this happen at the high school ASAP. That's it.
Assistant Superintendent's report. Evening assessment? Look, Angela, I'm sorry, that's right, I'm getting used to this.
It's okay. Thank you. I just wanted, in your package, you received the agendas for tomorrow's School Professional Development Day. So, as you can see, we've got an awful lot of things going on in the district. And we've got some people out at conferences. We've got some people in for professional development. We have some people being trained by in-house staff tomorrow. We have some experts coming into the district. We have a wide range of opportunities for learning tomorrow. So it should be a great day. So if you find yourselves around and would like to stop in at any one of the schools, there'll be an awful lot going on.
That's great. I just want to ask a question. It seemed to me that there were an awful lot of people attending all-day math professional development with Dr. Chen. And there's like all the different schools, all the different grades all at once.
Yeah. Dr. Chen has been working with teachers grades 4 through 8 every time he comes to visit who teach math. So for our 3 through 8, I'm sorry. Yeah, 3 through 8. So all of our 3rd grade teachers, all of our 4th grade teachers, all of our 5th grade teachers all teach math. And then we have content-specific teachers at the middle school. So he sees about 44 teachers when he comes, including special education teachers, during his sessions. And this is the last of our 5 sessions with Dr. Chen tomorrow. So, yeah. So that's a big day. And also, you notice we got very lucky this year that the Literacy for All conference, which is a very big conference for our teachers. They enjoy it very much. It's in Providence, Rhode Island. It fell on our professional development day. So that worked out really nicely. So we have quite a few teachers attending that as well. There was a physical education conference that happened to fall on the same day. So we just, there are a lot of opportunities going on. We're still doing some training around X2. There's some technology training for Explore teachers going on. There's some data analysis happening. There's just a wide variety of really good things.
Very comprehensive. Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, it should be a good day.
Any items for meeting assessment?
Yes, I will speak to it yet again. For all of you who have heard me, this is my 3rd time promoting tonight. On Saturday night, November 19th, the NEF auction is taking place at the Masonic Center in Newburyport. What I want to make sure you realize is that there is an online component to this year's auction. You can go to the Newburyport Education website and click on the Lighthouse auction icon, and you can see the inventory right now. Now, some of the items will be online only. Some of the items you will go to the event that night on the Saturday, and you can finish your bids and participate in bidding wars on that Saturday night. The online bidding portion is going to end on Friday the 18th at 10 o'clock. And what do we have, you're asking? Well, I will answer that for you. We have everything from, you can attend the final round of the Masters Golf Tournament, all the way to ice cream with your favorite kindergarten teacher, to a Ferrari ride to school, and also you can be gym teacher for a day. There's a variety of things. All of the teachers and many of the students actually have stepped up to help with this, as well as an amazing business community and individuals. I mean, we really have everything. Our tagline this year is shop without the guilt, because there really is something for everyone. And if you're doing holiday shopping, there are camps that you might already be looking at for purchasing for your family, like for kids for in the summertime. There are clinics, there are services. You can do snow plowing. Someone's offered their snow plowing services for the winter season. So check it out. And if you get your tickets online, it's only $20. If you come to the event the night of, it goes up to $30. So, and we are also having raffle tickets that you can buy online and you can win a free iPad. And this is all through the Newburyport Education Foundation, and our lead sponsor is the Institution for Savings, and we can't speak highly enough about both. Okay?
And our raffle tickets on sale tomorrow at the Bresnahan School?
Yes, they are, Steve. When you go to get your baked goods and other items as you check out to vote, please bring some extra money for your raffle tickets.
Dr. Kerber has a final comment. We will not be having an executive session after this meeting.
Yes, and don't forget to vote, everyone.
That's right.
Tomorrow's election day.
Just didn't get a chance to thank Angela for all her work putting together that professional development day packet. And I told Mrs. Kennedy that I would say every time, I want to thank Deidre for all her work on the MSBA. Yeah. So, I know she is. But Steph and her husband are the ones that are really leading this auction, so I want to thank you for all your.
Oh, we have an amazing team. This takes an army of people. We have amazing, committed parents and volunteers in this community. Newburyport is amazing.
Thanks, Steph.
And before I entertain the motion, I just wondered if there was any sort of update on the rescheduled NEF family music.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
It was basically Rocktoberfest, and it was held the 23rd of October. It was a great day. I don't have the numbers yet, but I know it was very well attended. 1,200. 1,200 people attended? Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah, I think I heard the figure 19,000. It was a good
It's like
fundraiser.
Woodstock, 19,000. Oh, that's the money.
No, just the money they raised.
Can I get a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.